I'm Suzanne Smith. Nancy J. Cavanaugh's book, This Journal Belongs to Ratchet, explores the heart and mind of an 11-year-old girl living in Florida with her unconventional dad. Receiving the 2013 Gold Medal for Children's Literature in the Florida Book Awards, this story is told in a way that is as unique as the characters inside. Nancy Cavanaugh joins us to talk about Ratchet in her journal. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Okay, so explain, who is Ratchet?
Ratchet is really every kid. Every kid wants a friend, and every kid wants to belong, and every child wants to find their own way in the world, and those are all the things that Ratchet really, really wants.
How do you come up with an idea for Ratchet? Did you get the idea of her first, or her life and what it was going to be like with her strange father?
For me, the ideas always start with the character, which is the fun part because I can think about who that character is and just what life might be like for them. And that's always usually pretty clear to me, but then the part that's very difficult is the plot. Making it turn into a story and eventually into a book that has rising action and falling action and conflict and all the things that you need to make a book, make a story. Those are the difficult parts for me. So I fall in love with my characters, and then I have to figure out how to write their story.
Well, how much, I know there's some similarities between you and Ratchet. How much of you is in Ratchet?
Well, what I tell most kids who ask that question, Ratchet is really very different from me, but the ways that we're very similar is the emotions that Ratchet feels. All the emotions that she feels are really how I feel when those kinds of things happen to me. So was I the kind of kid that grew up with a wacky dad or was homeschooled and all that? Not really. I was very typical, average, kid who went to school just like everybody else. But the emotions that Ratchet feels and the things that I think readers connect to are the things that are most like me in the book. But I do know how to fix engines.
Well, Ratchet is very good at that, and her real name is Rachel, correct?
Yes,
and
yes.
And everybody calls her dad always called her Ratchet.
Yes.
Now, tell us a little bit about her dad. What makes him so unconventional?
Well, I wanted to make him a standout character to just add more interest to the story. And I think a lot of times kids don't always appreciate their parents and their uniqueness. And I think one of the cool things about Ratchet is that by the end of the story, she realizes what is so unique about her father and why that's so good. And so she sort of sees her father almost for the first time by the end of the book for what he really is. So in the beginning, she doesn't like that he's this crazy, crazy guy. But by the end, that's sort of endearing to her, which is something that I think a lot of people can relate to, kids and adults, as we look back and we appreciate our parents more for what they are later on, looking back.
The structure of This Journal Belongs to Ratchet is not like a straight narrative or a straight diary. It's actually, there's different things. She sometimes has a poem assignment. Sometimes there are assignments that she has to do for her homeschooling. And so how did you decide on that structure to tell the story?
Well, I have a background as a teacher, so I sort of felt like I was giving myself assignments to write. And sometimes writers don't always have as much time as they'd like to write. So having different assignments made it easier because I could just work on one thing at a time and not worry about the whole book as a whole. Also, I really like alternative formats. I like different writing like that, and I think especially reluctant readers really like that, and it makes a book a lot more accessible to a lot of kids. So I was happy that I was able to find a way to tell the story that way, and I think it's one of the things that makes the book so unique, and I think it appeals to young readers, but I also find that it's appealing a lot to teachers because they're using it in their classrooms to teach the different forms of writing, which has been exciting for me to see how that has turned out. And when I was writing the story, I wasn't sure that it was going to work. I kept bringing pieces to my writing group, and they would ask me questions and say, how are you going to do this? How are you going to figure this out? How are you going to tell the whole story this way? And I usually just answered by saying, I don't know. And I just kept writing, and somehow it all was able to come together. So I was really happy about that.
How important is it to get feedback from people on how something works? Because I know some writers don't want feedback unless it's from their editor, and then some don't even want that. And then, and you bring it to a writing group. So what kind of feedback do you get that you feel is useful or that you think of? Is it individual for everybody?
Well, for me, it took me a very long time to have my first book published, almost 20 years. So my writing groups were very important to me when I was in those early years of just trying to become a better writer. So I don't think I would be here today if it weren't for those writing groups that I was in and the friends that were able to help me so much. So for me, it was very important as I was getting to this point because their help is just invaluable. It's just so, so important to have places that you can bounce it off, bounce all those ideas off. But now that I'm at this stage, I'm working mostly with my editor on ideas for my next book or working on a book that we're in progress on.
Oh, what's the next book about?
The next book is called Always Abigail, and it's about a girl named Abigail who all she wants to do is be a pom-pom girl. She's headed to 6th grade with her 2 best friends, and that is what they've dreamed of since they were in 3rd grade. But of course, 6th grade doesn't always turn out the way that you think it will. And so Abigail finds herself in a predicament because she has to choose between her popularity as a pom-pom girl and being a friend to the girl that is the outcast and the girl that's bullied in their school. So I really am looking forward to that book coming out because I think there are so many themes in it that kids will be able to relate to because it's things that we all relate to.
Thank you very much. Congratulations on the award, and we'll look forward to seeing more from you and maybe hearing something down the road, maybe more about Ratchet.
Great. Thank you so much.
The Florida Book Awards are presented annually to recognize, honor, and celebrate the best Florida literature. The program is coordinated by the Florida State University Libraries and co-sponsored by these groups that promote books by and for all Floridians.